All right, session 7, part B. Let's just discuss flight modes. We've done a lot of this already in previous lessons, but we'll still talk about it anyway. We have different flight modes uh, for these controllers, automated flight modes, which are helpful. There's 4 common types, and I've taken them mostly from DJI, but I've noticed that DJI being like the groundbreaking drone manufacturer and overwhelming market dominating drone manufacturer, that most other drones manufacturers are duplicating these functions. Makes sense, right? So anyway, here we go. There's what's called stabilized or attitude mode that you can select on the controller that will not necessarily use the GPS signal. So this would be handy for indoors, perhaps, a place where we don't get good Wi-Fi signals. There are certain atmospheric conditions outdoors or locations outdoors where there might be a confused GPS signals close to a bunch of large buildings might block the signals. So you'd want to do this. We'd want to turn it on ATI mode so you wouldn't get some false signal that would cause the drone to act erratically. Okay, so basically it will maintain level attitude. It'll use the accelerometers and the IMU information to maintain an attitude, but it could drift because it doesn't have the positioning, GPS positioning ability. And if there was wind or you're outdoors, it might start drifting with the wind. If you have it in this mode and you go up there and grab the drone and move the drone to another location, it'll be fine. It won't make any adjustments to that. We have the automatic modes though, so now and these would be demonstrated if we were in class, but I'm just saying that the drone would fly in a specific direction automatically without pilot input, so it'd be the programming mode as well. Another flight controller mode might be the return to home mode, which you can trigger that manually, or it might be automatically triggered by low battery or loss of signal, or part of an autopilot route. After you do a mapping mission, normally they will return home and climb to the preset altitude, whatever you set it for, fly over to where it took off, and then descend down, straight down into the landing place. You can also select just land now. So return to home, there's different selections there, obviously. The land now function would be handy if you were indoors. You certainly wouldn't want it to climb to altitude, right? And these are return to home and land now functions are what happens if you lose connections with the ground control station, or what would happen if the battery got low. If you're doing indoor operations or something with a ceiling where you don't want to climb to return to home altitude, you'd want to program it to land now. We have some advanced modes as well. GPS position mode, that's another one. P mode on some drones, it's called P mode. In the DJI drones, it's called P mode. So now you have GPS communication that turns it back on. You have horizontal position, lateral position, and vertical position as well. So if the wind blow picks up or something like that. You can test this by hovering and just grabbing the drone and trying to move it. It will resist. It won't want to go back to where it was when you started to grab the bottom of it and pulled it over to another position. The motors will go really fast and it'll be difficult to handle. So this is great for hovering, keeping steady camera picture, or navigating. Grid mode, that's what we normally end up doing if we're going to do a map. We put it on grid mode and it uploads the program to the drone, to the flight controller, and it performs the grid pattern. It could be a search pattern as well, but often it's for surveying. I guess you could even do it for patrolling. If it fly back and forth along a route, a fence line or something like that, maybe at the border, it'd fly back and forth over a specific route, just monitoring with the camera what's going on. That's a possibility as well. Then we have smart modes, which is sort of a different thing. It's something that most drone manufacturers have been adding to them just because it makes something, a repetitive function, easier. Like if you just want to orbit around a subject, if you've tried that by now, you've probably already tried that. You know, it takes coordination between the two thumbs, right, or the two fingers, however you do the control, to rotate around there and keep the camera face right at that particular point of interest. Or it can be done automatically, which just makes it so much easier. Really doesn't take a whole lot of thought, except that often the obstacle avoidance doesn't work during that. But you also have zooms where the drone will, dronies where the drone zoom out and zoom in. You can do panoramic photos, follow me, that kind of thing. There's a lot of other special advanced modes that most drones have, just to make something routine a little bit easier for you. Doesn't mean you shouldn't learn how to do it manually, but those are possibilities. Shifting gears slightly, mission concepts. Let's just talk about that for a second. Because we have options for payload, the payloads is exhausted. There's just many different options, right? And more as time goes along, people will develop new procedures and new ways of making money. So we do need to start reforming our mind a little bit to analyze mission needs. What is the specific need? We got some new application, we're doing something totally new. Or if we're doing something old, we still want to think through it, because we may be the one in charge of purchasing the equipment necessary for a particular mission. For example, first we certainly want to ask the question, what are you supposed to be doing, right? What does this person want to do? I think it's certainly going to be a difference between agricultural chemical distribution, maybe, whether it's fertilizer or pesticides, or the difference between that and the difference between doing real estate photographs for advertising purposes, right? This is just a difference between the two. We need to make those decisions. And when we make those decisions, then we decide what kind of payload will be required for that and which kind of airplane would be most appropriate for that. By that, we're just talking about fixed wing to multicopter. There's, by the way, different kinds of fixed wings as well. There's kinds of fixed wing aircraft that take off vertically and then turn into an airplane. And then there's kinds of fixed wing aircraft that take off just like a airliner takes off, it takes a runway and has to accelerate to climb. Or in the case of that, you've seen it before, they have some kind of a catapult that shoots the drone to enough speed to where it actually starts flying. So we need to decide what kind of airplane we're going to use. And what kind of flight control unit are we going to need? And what kind of a ground control unit are we going to need? Are we going to need video, or we can just take pictures as we're moving along and we don't really care? It just goes to an SD card and we don't care about seeing it as the mission is, as the mission goes on. So, okay, so for a quick little example, let's just look at this. Yeah, a little hokey, but let's just say the customer wants you to survey a plot of land for water erosion. This is a big deal, especially in South Georgia, when you have these gullies that start forming, and he wants to make a farm out of this thing. He wants to know where he wants to have some kind of a elevation plot on your map. So, okay, it's a map making mission, but you mostly want to know the ground level and where it's got water drainage, etc. So, okay, he says, you bid the thing $4,000, or he said, "Yeah, I'll give you $4,000 to do this." Well, you want to, if you're the one buying the drone, you probably want to leave a little money for paying for your gas and lunch, that kind of things. So you have to make some decisions. Okay, so here's some decisions. There's some examples, right? Fixed wing, $1,700, multicopter, $500. Well, it's a 6-mile plot of land. Now put aside the fact that 6 miles is beyond line of sight. Let's just say you do have a waiver to do this, so we don't, that's not part of the discussion. Definitely fixed wing would be preferable. That's a long way. If you did a multi-copter, you'd be running out of batteries, or multi-copter would work if you had, you know, if you had somebody at the other end of the property with another battery, but nah, fixed wing drone is probably the most efficient in this case. Okay, no, this is would you need a camera? We need a camera, of course. Should we need thermal? No, he doesn't care about the temperature. Some kind of optical, but you know what? FPV, all you're doing is clicking a bunch of pictures with one angle pointing straight down. We could have a fixed wing gimbal too. See, gimbals, it could be gimbaled or a fixed mount. I didn't mean to say fixed gimbal. I meant those are two different things. Do we need a gimbal one? No, because it's just pointing the camera straight down to take a series of pictures that you're going to bring back to your computer and run it through the software to turn it into a map. So you add that up, making those choices, $1,700 for the drone, could be $20, you know, for the camera, then $500 for the fixed wing, right? So you add that all up, and it ends up that ends up being $2,000 or maybe less than $2,000 spent for the equipment. That gives you $2,000 you have in your pocket as some kind of a profit. So that's the kind of decisions that you might be faced with. You just want to be aware that these things happen. So I'm not asking, you know, it gets maybe a little more complicated than that, and probably your first job is going to be working for somebody else, and they're going to tell you what you got. Or when you first start out, you're also going to face for the issue is, well, I don't have any money at all, because who's going to pay me $4,000 up front? They're going to pay me the $4,000 after I finish the job, right? So, yeah. So that's just the second part of this consideration of what kind of drone, the right drone. What are we doing here? We need to make some judgment calls about what kind of drone we need and the possibilities there. Thank you.